The fat is grand, bottles of all description, you must understand. Liquor to supply a nation. I have ordered whiskey, punch of cream and gin and brandy, lime and tonic water, lemon heart and angostura.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
It's Christmas morning.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Mama, drink if you're drinking.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
No time for shivering.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Come in where you see where you gonna get. Sit down.
That's right. We are rum.
Have everything.
I want rum. Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum. Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum. Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum. Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Muma, Muma, would you like to join your sonny? I am over here, happy in the mother country, darling, for the Christmas. Your son would be really jumping. Listen to the chorus of what we all will be singing.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
It's Christmas morning.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Mama, drink if you drinking.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Let we fed if we fed in.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Again, Muma, I have invited Jamaica, lovely Grenada, Barbados, also Guyana. It's an invitation for a stupendous occasion. You can just imagine, we drink until New Year's morning.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
It's Christmas morning.
Drink a rum and a punch of cream and drink a rum.
Do drink if you drink.
Patriotic was the preferred bidder. Patriotic was given a deadline of October 31st, 2020 to submit a final proposal and address some key issues. There were three
attempting to sell a complex asset.
The statement from Energy Minister.
We were attempting to sell a complex asset.
The statement from Energy Minister Franklin Khan just before he announced that the deal for the sale of the refinery could not be reached with Patriotic Energies. In September 2019, Cabinet announced that Patriotic was the preferred bidder. Patriotic was given a deadline of October 31st, 2020 to submit a final proposal and address some key issues. There were three key issues that could not be worked out.
The purchase price financing, 2, the restart financing, and 3, the issue of first priority lien on the asset.
Yes, indeed, of course. A pleasant good night to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are streaming on the world, remember, pleasant good day to you. Yes, where there are critical matters that may have been overlooked, and overlooked from the perspective that we were made to believe as a people that the government was working in the best interests of the country, and therefore all of us. And now that we have the benefit of hindsight, now we have the benefit of history, not that we deliberately will want, of course, to be revisionists, because revisionists, of course, like to put things in a perspective that, of course, is convenient to the particular reviser at the time. But of course, in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, in the context of the corridor transformation, the ground report, of course, Alan Roberts and others, what we prefer to do at this point in time is, of course, correct the wrongs of the past, and indeed, if there were things that was correctly done, well, of course, we admit and we, of course, applaud. But where it has been decidedly determined that the conduct was one that was mired in deception, mired in evil, mired in conjobbery, mired in, of course, criminal behavior, mired in dishonesty, mired in dishonorableness, mired in the propensity, of course, to hoodwink and to deceive and to deflect, while of course, people who are supposed to be our leaders and direct the country in the interests of the country and all, and we see it unfolding that it was about or is about their selfish personal agenda, then we have a duty and responsibility to expose. And so when we look at, and we are going to, of course, look at it critically now, and look at the chronology and the historical context, and we would know why we are here today, and the fact that Dr. Rowley and they, because they would have established for them a pernicious, or should I say, a illegal pattern of behavior, if not, of course, addressed by the population or identified by the population, we will be lured to believing that somehow they are acting in the interests of the people by doing illegalities. It is in that context I thought we should revisit, of course, that whole scenario with respect, of course, to the closure of Petrotrin. We know fundamentally, and we have established that it was driven pell-mell, monolithically, and of course it was triggered by a fuse that clearly was nestled in the fake oil matter. So we know that because Dr. Rowley's conduct was one of extreme questions, and was potentially, of course, not only to excommunicate him from the party and the government under normal circumstance. And clearly, there is no one inside of that party or that cabinet that has the temerity, the gall, and of course the balls, and maybe the testicular fortitude to tell Rowley as it is, or to take over from this maroon bunch of individuals spearheaded by Rowley, who clearly is a menace to Trinidad and Tobago society. You know what I say? I say that Rowley is a menace to Trinidad and Tobago society. And so what they prefer to do is to coalesce and to conspire to keep one man who is holding the rest of the country to ransom. And they are comfortable with that and claiming to be government ministers and, of course, managing the affairs of the country. I say to you, as I've said before, hold all your tail. No one will make any sacrifice for all you, because all you're eating ham, lamb, and jam, all you're taking the sink, the bowl, the dish, the spoon, and every damn thing. And then, of course, you want to stay there and pretend that you are holier than thou, and that there is nothing, of course, sinister, evil, wicked, diabolical about all you. About all you, I say, that is plural, not about Rowley alone, all you. So therefore, we're going to be talking plural here, not, of course, a singular. That being as it may, let us look at some of the issues. Tomorrow, of course, I'll be much more comprehensive. But tonight, I just want you to focus on the fact that, one, Dr. Rowley came and he made an announcement, surprisingly, and of course, juxtaposed, and maybe in close proximity to, of course, the revelation of the fake oil matter. We saw, of course, the resignation of the then chairman of Petrotrin as well. In that scenario, and in quick motion, in quick time, Rowley comes to the country, just as how he went, of course, to the Joint Select Committee after telling Tobagonians that the process for acquiring boats for the sea bridge was that the administrators on the port, they identify, they go wherever in the world and look for it, and then of course the PS then gets involved by preparing a cabinet note, and from that cabinet note the line minister, in this case 2 ministers, but eventually it started with the fellow who is totally out of not only control but out of his depth, and certainly a square peg in round hole, and talking about Hines. And then, of course, it was left to the current Minister of Works, who is still there, talking about a sin none. Yes, a total dunderhead, sin none. But the fact of the matter is that the minister will now have to take that note and take it to the cabinet, and then the cabinet sits on it and, of course, deliberates, and as a consequence, make a decision. Well, he said that to Tobagonians. But when he went to the JSC, when, of course, that matter was being investigated as far as the sea bridge and the collapse thereof, he believed that he could hoodwink everybody. He believed that he brighter than everybody. He believed that aggression is the best form of defense. And he will put himself, of course, because he tells himself that he has the cover of all of the legalities surrounding the office of the Prime Minister. We now know that if you have a dastard individual, if you have a beast, if you have a criminal, if you have a deceitful and deceiving person in that office, it can be easily not just manipulated for evil, but of course they can stay there and continue the evil so long as an election has not been called in order to remove the tails. So we know that. So the objective here, when the next election is called, is not only to get rid of Rowley and, of course, that bunch of opportunistic political parasites who clearly have not only deceived, but are the menace to Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore the greatest threat to our democracy. So what must happen is that we must get with the incoming government a constitutional majority to take away some of the powers, or never again must a brute, must be a rambunctious, there must not be a brutal and ruthless individual like Rowley, heartless and of course bruising in such an office so as to give us pain, ache, agony, stress, oppression, and all of the characteristics that is associated with, of course, a total and absolute dictator, as we know it from a classic definition perspective. But that being as it may, the fact of the matter is that when the announcement was made by Rowley himself, that's the point I'm making. Rowley is prepared, of course, to stand in that and to defend the indefensible under normal circumstance. And we saw it in that particular case no different to when, of course, he tried to defend Al-Rari and his children and those guns that made, of course, social media all over the place. It was, of course, a bonanza as far as that is concerned. We saw him, of course, standing in the way of the report of not only Mote, with respect, of course, to what transpired on the port, but also that of Lennox Smith. We saw the same thing happen with respect, of course, to Camille Robinson Regis and the mysterious monies that was supposed to have moved from one bank, but it remained in the bank that they say it will have been removed from, and then, of course, ended up in another bank. And when the questions were raised, Rowley was prepared to say that he will take his money out of the same bank. I'm talking about the government's bank. I'm talking about First Citizen Bank, only to defend the indefensible. So we know is a criminal clique, a criminal cabal that has, of course, been running Trinidad and Tobago over the last 8 years. And we can go on and on in terms, of course, his interference with, of course, the Police Service Commission. We could also, of course, look at his attempting to usurp the office of the Commissioner of Police. We can look at him abusing and stretching beyond, of course, reason the office of the head of the National Security Council, arrogating unto himself some kind of executive role or some kind of operational role, where, of course, he hired through the office of the Prime Minister detectives from Barbados and the UK. In the case, of course, of the drug Susu matter. And we have seen him, of course, up and down the country. Up and down the country. These days he has pip on it, but up and down the country. Talking about, of course, the so-called potent and devastating state witness called Vincent Nelson. And all of that turned out to be pie in the sky, as he spat in the sky and it fell in his face. And he still will not, of course, relent. So that is an extremely dangerous man. We cannot overemphasize how dangerous this PNM is, and, of course, this fellow called Rowley. He will go on the international stage knowing full well that he's a blasted rapist and a pedophile, and then, of course, try to generate a kind of position to pretend that somehow he is Papa Doc and Baby Doc all in one. Papa Doc and Baby Doc all in one. Flaunting, of course, his academic credentials. That too, of course, one has to question now, having regard to the level of dunderheadedness that he has, of course, spoken, at the level of misogynic statements and the amount of what I consider to be bellicose and very aggressive statements against the people, particularly his opponents. And, of course, even when people may be perceived by him to, of course, be a threat to his political survivability and advancement. We saw it, of course, when they actually delivered tear gas on those innocent protesters, calling on Rowley to go around the savannah. And, of course, tear gas were delivered. And then in pushback number one, some 5,000 persons there. Of course, in pushback number two, 9,000. But of course, why it's COVID regulations was the cover for, of course, their actions. We saw, of course, 32 persons thereabout being charged, held, and of course, kept for some time in, of course, very, what I consider to be claustrophobic environment. And I to tell you how close they were, but yet still the police were saying they were breaching, of course, the social distancing rules. We know, and having regard, of course, to all of the unfoldings, whether it be Vincent Nelson, whether it be, of course, the kidnapping of Brent Thomas from Barbados. We know that what this government is capable of, and therefore we must conclude that it is a threat to Trinidad and Tobago. But let's go straight, of course. Don't forget the people, if you wish to call, you can call now, of course, 337-6940, 337-6940, and of course you can call Anne-Marie if you need some help, or you want to, of course, post Christmas, but we're going into the New Year's, and you want to generate any assistance for us or for yourself, well, then, of course, you can make the call. But I had a very interesting conversation this afternoon with, of course, a very, I would consider to be innocuous, or should I say, unassuming gentleman. Very soft-spoken, but, of course, very knowledgeable. And he was concerned about, of course, air pollution, EAR, and not AIR. Of course, we talk about noise pollution, in other words. And, of course, he introduced me to a video that he made that I'm going to play, of course, in future programs. But, of course, he has highlighted what in contemporary urban environment, the whole question of noise pollution, and the question of vehicles, and if it's not vehicles, well, of course, if you're living near the shore, but of course you are in a, what I consider to be a urban area, then of course you have boats and all, you have, of course, sirens, you have horns, you have, of course, people making noise, you have music in vehicles, etc. You have, of course, trucks and all description of vehicles passing, and of course with no regard for the community and the noise level that they would have been, of course, projecting that decibel so high that people in urban communities prefer probably to go out of that particular environment and live in a more rustic and a more country type environment, simply because, but of course, in many instances, people do not have the resources so to do, so they have to remain there and have to adjust. I don't know if muffs might be a solution, but people going as far away from the source of the noise as possible, if that is possible at all, particularly when you're living in an urban community where the streets are so close together, running parallel, and therefore you may get now noise in the front and in the back. So that is something I will be, of course, following up and looking at with the authorities. I think the EMA it should be given some kind of recommendation. I am looking to chew on and to make good that kind of what I consider to be nuisance for so many, especially the senior citizens who would have, of course, made their contribution and wanting to live peaceful and noise-free. Noise, of course, free is relative, but certainly not noiseless, because that is almost impossible. You have the rain falling on the roof, you have, of course, a number of things. You have the winds blowing, and of course, and they will blow trees, and trees will sway, and of course, the rustling of the wind through the trees, and of course, created by the leaves and all of that. So we know that it has to be practical and it has to be pragmatic. That being as it may, let me get straight, of course, to the essence of tonight. What has happened with respect, of course, to the Petrotrin oil refinery? Well, we know it is in mothball. We know that we missed a tremendous opportunity because of the war between Ukraine and that of Russia. And we know too that as a consequence of that, Dr. Rowley tried, of course, to play down that opportunity lost, and then, of course, play up the benefits from patriotic, simply not patriotic, but of course the company that was created in order to, of course, win and find and export crude oil for Trinidad and Tobago, that particular company. But of course, he played up what they were doing, consequential of the war between Russia and Ukraine, saying that they made an extra $8 billion. Yeah, heritage I'm talking about here, $8 billion, just so because of the price increase of a barrel of oil, and not that they increase production in order to make that kind of money. And they have not been able to capitalize on it because clearly they have not been able to increase the number of barrels of oil that they can extract from the ground in order to, of course, capitalize on a very, what I consider to be, high-priced market. But that being as it may, let's go straight, of course, to Franklin Can. We need to go there because, of course, we're not bringing back the dead, but say what, it will be consistent with what Neil and Marcy has said and what Dr. Rowley has grown accustomed to, and that is to say, Likoto. So, no problem. Let's go straight to the lines. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
A pleasant good night, Lennox, to you and to everybody on the chat, and season greetings. Lennox, this shameless, blank, lying failure, SOB, said that crime is disrupting the harmony of the country. What harmony, Lennox? Can you explain to me, please, what harmony? Because I know since the 8th of September 2015, we have not had harmony in this country. Because the first thing he did when he lied his way into government. Lennox, are you hearing me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead, ma'am. We're hearing you loud and clear.
Oh, because I was getting a background noise now.
Sorry about that.
When he lied his way into government, was that he tell the people, wean off the government, tighten your belt. He lied to the farmers. When he told them, I will give all of the land and the money, vote for me. After he tell them, no, that is EU money. EU never give them that money. That money is for the treasury. He shut down Carony Greens, and then we started snowballing into hell. So tell me, Lennox, where is the harmony? We are here, he listed a video on social media warning people not to go into Port of Spain. Lennox, I did not even know that something was going on in Port of Spain. The same Port of Spain that they opened up the tourism, they made a tourist hub. Right? Taking tourists into these streets and them, warning people not to go. Everybody heard that I was in town this morning, kept calling me, get back home, get back home. I didn't even know something was going on, but I had things to do. So I went, right? Was that harmony? No, you went in fear. You're saying your prayers, you're massaging your rosary beads, and you're going on in fear. But you have to do what you have to do. The man said, vote for the PNM if you want to save your lives. 560 murders. Who saved those people? Nobody. Look at the innocent woman who was collateral damage. Where is the harmony? Since Keith Rowley stepped into government, we don't know what is harmony. You remember Trinidad and Tobago under his what was voted the stinkiest country in the world? And look at the difference. And the Kamla Pasabi says, sir, it was the happiest country in the world. And he coming to talk about crime disrupting the harmony. The only people who live in harmony are the recusal quintuplets, the 1%ers who he making richer, all who benefited from kickback, nobody else. So when you see he want to talk his nonsense and have people clapping and listen to him, something is wrong with them as well. You are hearing how much money in Forex masses getting to communicate with the dead. People can't get to send for their children. They can't even get to go away for medical or anything. And you talk about harmony. Kid Rowley better look up the meaning of the word harmony, because we certainly has never been and will never be under PNM watch living in harmony. Thanks a lot, Lennox. I know tonight is our last night for 2023. No, we have Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, yes.
But I just want to wish everybody a safe weekend, because you see what things going on out there. And Lennox, before I leave, I want to remind the senior citizens out there, please go and renew your life certificate. I know with the hectic season and all of that, right? But they have a grace period. And please, like those born in October, well, in November, they're supposed to be doing it now, this month, right? So please, all you go, because all you know that pension, how much it means to you all, and they don't want to lose it. Lennox, thanks a lot again, and have a...
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But of course, I want to, of course, happily reciprocate those commiserations for a better year. But of course, we know that we can, of course, as human beings, be as optimistic as possible. But we, at the end of the day, must face reality. And the reality is that demands of us to be pragmatic. And to be pragmatic simply means that the presence of this administration into a new year clearly is only clouds, murk, and of course, all kinds of dangers lurk, which of course we can of course look for and try to mitigate and try to avoid. But at the end of the day, it is danger anyway, and therefore caused by a team of individuals who clearly are themselves a danger to the society, a danger to even their family, the level of disgrace that they have, of course, perpetrated, and the level of dishonesty that seem to have been the hallmark and the idiosyncratic nature of this administration across the board. I mean, it is simply shambolic, simply horrible, and simply, of course, unacceptable. That being as it may, I want to say that, yes, Dr. Rowley will go, because these days he is referring to the watchwords of the country: tolerance, production, discipline. He is referring now. Just the other day, he was saying that the country's crime situation is one of a public health nature. And before that, he was saying that it was the parents that were sending the monsters to, of course, wherever and producing the monsters. Before that, he called on the clergy and gave them hampers, etc., and told them that, listen, you have to do more. And before that, he said in no uncertain terms that it was the police responsibility and only them. Wise, of course, when he came into government, he had, of course, a 10-point plan. And he was saying at that time that, listen, there is a need for a commissioner of police. And he castigated Kamala. And he castigated the UNC. And he maligned them. And he said that they were neophytes and that they were incompetent as far as crime is concerned. And even when, of course, SOE was instituted, he was, of course, in blissful stupor because it was a political opportunity. And boy, did he ramage, did he, of course, engage in, of course, saying that he has a affinity for the African community and that young people are being, of course, persecuted Africans by, of course, the Kamala Persad administration. And today, just as then in 2011, just as then when the SOE was, of course, introduced, the jails are 99% Africans, as it was then. This viper, this opportunistic, toxic individual, totally and absolutely out of depth, has no clue as to what he has found himself in, but will continue, of course, to give us the level of what I consider to be platitudinous hogwash, and, of course, his phantomism and his illusions and delusions, but, of course, to take the fools as he sees us to the next level of cacophonous babblings. You know what I say? I say to the next level of cacophonous babbling. That's all it's about. People call him all kind of things. The rant and raving of a total nincompoop or a total evil individual. All of that, they call him. So he said that as part of his 10-point plan for crime back in 2015, 8 years ago, that, of course, a commissioner of police. We didn't know then. I want to say, at least I didn't know that Likoto was real. I didn't know that. I thought it was a figment, and, of course, what we call in Trinidad and in Laventille, fatigue. Of course, a pseudonym, a false name for a particular person or situation. I thought it was that. I didn't believe, of course, in the supernatural and, of course, the ability of some, as a consequence of some kind of incantation, some kind of words that you would use to, of course, effect an outcome that maybe under normal circumstance a human being will resist, but because you would have because you would have spoken those words, that the person will just do what you want them to do, particularly if it is of an evil nature. That is what we are talking about. Let's go straight to the lines. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night, Lennox. How are you going, boy?
I'm all right. And yourself?
Well, life and life the most important thing for now, yeah, boy?
Yes.
Tomorrow brings what it brings. I see a man with take a rolling pin and beat it.
You're breaking up.
When the police come now, right? You know the man say, you're beating the devil out of his father. That's the defense. So it seems to me that we have such a demons and devils around the country now. Mafia demons. You see demons all on the highway. Demons all over the place, Lennox.
Yes.
We need to get the Pope down here to do some exorcism. I wait around for yesterday when all these fellas was getting shoot around. I thought he say cameras are health issue. We should have one hour vaccine and vaccinate people on them. Because I did joke them taking it. Trying with a health issue. It's a damn health issue here because people dead. You can't bring them alive when they collect lead poisoning. How they go stop that? They themselves for no press conference to deal with this issue. They have no idea what they do. They're on autopilot. Them just in first class eating and drinking. While the plane knows driving right at this moment in time. Now, I'm telling all you see, just as how Trinidad ending the year, it's just so you could begin the year. They mark my words on that. The gunslinging and the shooting, this is just the beginning. Once the police in capturing these people and arresting and holding them, they will continue brazenly doing this thing in the public, in broad daylight, in midnight, whatever time they come in for you. And you will tell me all these fellas get away, nobody know how to with them going. Then like them giving me visible power. Really, they don't have the billions of dollars spent in national security. They don't have no apparatus to fly overhead. I mean, they have helicopter and people using drone now. They could use that to find these criminals. If they're driving whatever car, they could pinpoint the car and catch them on a roadblock or some kind of thing. But I don't know, boy. This place is small to have these criminals around the place. Over 570 people done there already.
Yeah, more than New York with 7 million people.
Yeah, it's about 600 because people done missing already and you don't know which hole them get gone there already. But earlier on them was about and claim that, like I said here, I thought they need 600, so they have an improvement. That is their claim to fame. All of them should have done fire their work, including Hines. A waste of time. A waste of time, man. Eh? Don't have people in this country, you know. You could be next tomorrow. Everybody's fair game.
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Russian roulette.
Brazenly, Lennox, when they come for their target, they don't care what man, woman, and child standing there. Them shooting left, right, and center. They have no emotion with the game.
Yes.
Have a good day, Lennox.
Thank you very much, of course. And I want to tell you, of course, somebody told me today, I think it's good damn advice, that, of course, I must be careful myself because, of course, you never could tell in this Russian roulette environment where anybody could be at the wrong place at the wrong time and then, of course, find themselves at the wrong end of a gun. Not that they are carrying any, but certainly we are talking about the wrong end of a bullet. That's the more specific terminology that must be applied at this stage. But of course, I want to say categorically, yes, I have heeded that particular advice, and I would take precautionary measures. Of course, I would want, of course, I had another criticism that I got today as well. Yes, today was the day for absorbing criticism. Now, that is to say that I would, of course, start with a particular project or topic like what is behind me now, and then, of course, maybe go into different areas and then get back to the topic afterwards, and by that time people might have lost the essence of it or may not be able to follow. Well, that is something that I think maybe partially avoidable. Partially, I say. So in other words, there is an unavoidability aspect of it, because if a person calls and they express a particular concern, and I feel that there is a need to, of course, bolster or should I say reduce, if necessary, the emphasis that particular presentation or contribution would have made. I have a duty and responsibility so to do, but of course I will try to get back to the main topic as quickly as possible, as is the case now. So I will forego what I was talking about in terms of the crime and criminality in the country, and of course the fact that the Rowley was, of course, a supporter, enthusiastic lover of the African youths and so on, only when Kamala Day was around. But when he's here now and seeing the reality of the situation, he now, of course, either remains silent or he finds 3 and 4 different excuses for the same matter. Let's go straight to the line. Pleasant good night Welcome.
Pleasant good night to you too, Lennox. How are you?
Yeah. I'm fine. And yourself?
Well, hanging in there, Lennox. I wanna just talk a little bit about crime because it's not really crime. It's more like the gangsters out there, and I feel like I've never seen something like this in my life. And I've traveled extensively, okay? But the kind of shooting that takes place here is like not like something out of the movies, but it's like something out of the 70s and 80s, or maybe 70s, 80s, when breakdancing was coming out in America, and you had all these rival gangs, the Crips and the Blood. Then you had the Bronx, New York gang, the Harlem gang there in New York versus the California gang. And then you had rappers rapping and big money and they shooting each other, and Tupac Shakur was part of that in Compton, all the way in California, and it's like it's happening right here, and nobody, like, we're seeing such brazenness now, and the police, they're not doing anything because it's out of their control. The police, I was listening to another program today with Heavy and TC on the Iowa radio show, and I like Heavy because I've been listening to him for 8 years now, and he's a real smart guy now. He's smartened up a lot, and they were talking about they were making a comment about the police, the chief of one police commissioner, some police head guy saying that these guys who were committing this crime, they were cowards and they should be shameful or they're shameless. And Heavy said, I think TC said it. He said, "Why they're not cowards? These guys were running on the streets with guns. They were running away from you. They were shooting. They were out to do a mission, and they're brave. Brave in the sense that they're not fearful of dying. But you see, these two gangs, the six gangs, this kid came on six, and then you have the sevens, right?
Yes,
With the
the
Prezi
eighth
guy
and the
with
nines
the
as well.
yeah, and this Prezi guy, and this whole thing is about songs. They're making big money, and a lot of kids follow these guys. Cayman has a huge following in Trinidad with these kids. A lot of high school kids listen to Cayman. And I've heard these kids talk about him, and they rave about it, and they start singing his song, and I'm like, what? So I started listening to him, and I was so disappointed because he uses derogatory terms to talk about women. He talks about putting a nozzle in your nose and you're wheeling out, and it's like I don't understand. I just do. It's not like it's. If he was singing something a little bit more positive, I could get it. But the stuff he's saying is just so violent, and it's all about making money and having this lifestyle that's just it's frightening. It's a lifestyle that a lot of gangsters want or rich people aspire to, and then you don't look back. And the prime minister is very much aware of all of this because a lot of these gangsters, they have contracts, don't they? Get contracts? Yeah, they do. They're community leaders. That's what they call them. They help their community. Like in Mexico, you know what the Mexicans did in a small village in Mexico recently? Some farmers, the gangs were asking the farmers to pay up, and the farmers got together because they had no weapons, and these gangs had guns, AK-47, you name it. And the gangs came, they had a meeting, and they said, "We want to collect, we rent. We want you to pay now your taxes to us." And the farmers got together secretly, and they called them to the meeting. And when those guys showed up, the farmers started beating them up, and some of the farmers died, but they killed 10 of those gang members. When the police come in out to arrest them, the attorney general says, "We can't arrest you guys. It was self-defense. You guys were protecting your farm, and so we can't arrest you." You see, there's a fear in this country to arm the citizens with weapons. And the fear is that if they arm the citizens with weapons, the citizens will uprise and throw out a government. And that is the fear. They're fearful of a revolution. But they are pushing us, taxing us, while we are seeing gangs growing out of control and influencing your children to an extent because they glamorize sexual abuse of women and girls. That's what they do in these songs because they're community leaders. So they determine the rules in their community. That's why we live like animals in certain villages in this country. So I feel like this prime minister watches all of this and he runs. He washed his hands of this place. And he is so contrite to say that I don't need to be at that meeting with Kamala. I have appointments there. I gotta go fly out of here, and I have to go to New York to see my son-in-law, who's a Wall Street big oil guy now, an investor, and my daughter and all my beautiful children. I gotta fly to Dubai. I gotta meet with the Saudis. They have big money. This prime minister doesn't give a damn about nobody in this country. He should be on TV right now talking to us, reassuring the people in this country, look, we need investors in this country, and we're going to work together, and we're going to solve this problem and get rid of this crime. But he refuses. So you see, I'm so angry at him because he's a failure. He's not even a leader in my book. And he just does not care about the welfare of the nation. All he cares about is the oil money and the gas money. End of story. That is my comment tonight. I was just so disappointed, and I didn't even mention Heinz's name because you don't want to, because this man is invisible. He's not here. This is not how you run a country, people. If this happened in America, it'll be all over the place, right? But you see how the prime minister said Trinidadians are stupid. The people are stupid. You see that in America, man? They would assassinate you the next day. But you see, here anything goes. You could do anything. You could pee at the side of the road. You could defecate in somebody's yard. Nobody cares. And you could take a machine gun in a major highway in the middle of the day and shoot at people. That's it. That is Trinidad. That is how frustrating it is right now for me. All right, that's my comment, Lance.
Thank you very much. And of course, not to mention, our condolences go out to the what is called, the police call collateral damage to the woman or the lady that was, of course, shot as well in the melee. The prime target escaped, but of course, nonetheless, is a very horrendous situation, a very frightening situation. And I caution and, of course, beseech that you be careful out there. Go out if you have to, but stay at home. Why that in itself may not be a guarantee, but certainly it is better than if you are exposed on the nation's thorough affairs, and of course, and in places where you could consider to be outdoor, and therefore may not be able to defend yourself one way or another. So please, let us go straight, of course, to the clip, because as I said, I don't want to burden the patience of anyone, but at the same time trying to please everyone. That is sometimes in human situations a very challenging and difficult task. You can't please everyone. But of course, here we try so to do. Let me say formally, of course, pleasant good night once again to all and sundry, East, West, North, South, Central, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are streaming on the World Wide Web, a pleasant good day to you. And of course, let me say in advance as well, because I will not be on tomorrow being Friday, as per usual, but certainly on Saturday, I will be back, as well as on New Year, on Old Year's, and then into New Year's. But I want to wish you, in spite of the circumstances, and in spite of the pessimism, and in spite of the depression and the really and truly concerning scenario that is Trinidad and Tobago today. But thank God that there is, of course, the reality that 2024 will come, and with every passing month, we reach closer and closer to 2025, and of course within that year, the people will have an opportunity, of course, to tell Dr. Rowley and his minions that you have breached, that you have betrayed, that you have disappointed, that you have abused, that you have engaged, of course, in criminal behavior, and as the term he likes, and that is something I took note of mentally, of course, and that is when he said, you fashion things, Dr. Rowley. You fashion things, the cabinet. You fashion things, the ministers, towards wrongdoing. You fashion these scenarios towards wrongdoing. And therefore, you will you have to conclude that the PNM is a criminal enterprise, and you only have to watch at Balize House. I was across there today, and I saw, of course, the red and white building, and of course the commandeering of part of the northern part of a northern piece, I should say, of the Tranquility Government Secondary School. And of course, last night we talked about, as Eric Williams would have, of course, promulgated as a fundamental principle of a democracy, and that is that we must be very, very careful, and we must resist the arbitrariness or the arbitration or the arbitrariness of government juggernaut, and their tendency, which of course is a clear manifestation in today's Trinidad and Tobago government, led by clearly a person who has lost his marbles all entirely and believe he could perpetrate at that level of arrogance, contempt, and ruthlessness in perpetuity or indefinitely. Let's go straight, of course, to the situation with respect to Petrotrin and the sale of that oil refinery to, of course, Patriotic. And listen, of course, we'll start from there, but tomorrow I'll have a more comprehensive analysis from the fake oil, come right back to Dr. Rowley's, of course, statement, and then right back to eventually where Patriotic was unable to get the contract, even though there were a lot of boasting by, of course, the finance minister in particular, but we must put the appropriate background. And the background to that was there was to be an election in 2020, and in those circumstances we would examine critically why it is that they were touting that Patriotic will have gotten the oil refinery to run, only of course after the elections they then say no way. There are circumstances, and there are very valid and very, what I consider to be poignant reasons why that has been so. And I want to tell you, it's never in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. Otherwise, the oil refinery would have been functioning and working in our interest today. And there may well not be the need to, of course, impose property tax and, of course, increase electricity, etc., having regard to the windfall and the proliferation of gas and oil in close proximity to us, where of course we can easily, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Guyana, make arrangements having regard to the oil and gas and other petrochemical infrastructure that we have here. What we don't have is the raw material, but certainly some kind of a relationship could have developed where Trinidad become, of course, the manufacturing center, as we have already been so acclaimed in the Caribbean, because we are the most industrialized island in the chain of islands, that archipelago from Trinidad right up, of course, to Jamaica. And therefore, one would have expected that that kind of negotiations would have taken place. But no, not for Rowley. And they have, of course, either kicked the pail down the road, or they have, of course, poisoned their opportunity. And therefore, it is behoving now on Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC to take up the gauntlet and, of course, move into that new era to continue the prosperity, the real prosperity, and not the fake and falsehood and the delusion that is Dr. Rowley. And when they tell us that they signed something for 30 years with Venezuela, and that is a Christmas present that is at minimum 3 or 4 years away. I mean, if there is ever a lunatic or lunacy in the PNM Rowley administration, then of course that has to be it. I mean, that level of insult is bewildering. Let's go straight, of course, to Khan and hear what he has to say in terms of the asset that they were supposed to be selling. I'm focusing here on the oil refinery.
Attempting to sell a complex asset.
The statement from Energy Minister Franklin Khan just before he announced that the deal for the sale of the refinery could not be reached with Patriotic Energies. In September 2019, Cabinet announced that Patriotic was the preferred bidder. Patriotic was given a deadline of October 31st, 2020 to submit a final proposal and address some key issues. There were 3 key issues that could not be worked out.
The purchase price financing, 2, the restart financing, and 3, the issue of first priority lien on the asset. The other 2 bidders, there were 5.
I think I will pause quickly here only to say that when the offer was made for sale, the government would have known that. And secondly, the government said it is not a problem. You will hear Bert when he said it is not a problem because the government will cover that. Let's go straight to the line. Pleasant good night. Welcome.
Right again there, Lennox. I was listening to that same show what she was talking about, but the show before I had a character called said Mr. Aruka. You know this consummate done saying? Crime began in the year 2010 to 2015, right when crime started. Like you forget the man in years when you had a massive kidnapping in this country. You say Kamala is the one that caused all the crimes to take place and all the gun running and everything that's taking place now because of she and the UNC. Right? And that's soon saying she run our apartheid government. But if Kamala running our apartheid government, the PNA running a genocide government. You understand? Because as far as I'm concerned, they're pronouncing death upon everybody in this country and they're not trying to deal with it. They do the same thing for the COVID and the crime situation is just as bad. Because they're allowing criminals to kill you, right? And they're suffering the crime from taking place by refugee individuals and dealing with the criminal activities taking place in this country. Let's imagine you have a restaurant capital. Yeah? I think all of them foreign countries who send the tourists down here should send warning for them and not to enter the forestry area and this area where the gangsters is. Because their life not so. This is what's going on in this place. I want these people, these foreigners to know that. Do not frequent areas like Valentin and these forestry and really gangsters is. Especially their life in their own hands.
Yes, indeed. But I want to say once again, and I cannot overemphasize, and I will regurgitate as long as it takes. You see, I am not impressed or will never parrot what you know is compound stupidity, and that therefore the utterances of such an individual is of a similar nature. It reminds me of the Latin expression non compos mentis, of unsound mind. Because you cannot tell me that as soon as the PNM gets into office, these exponentially increasing murders taking place and heinous crimes, and they then look to blame someone of the past when these things were not occurring. I made the point earlier that Rowley was in love with young African youths. He went up to Barataria, etc. Beat them, and he said he loved them and there's special people with special problem and need special attention, etc. But the ratio, the ethnic composition of the prison, the ethnic composition of the prison then is the same today. Some 99% thereabout Africans. So what are you telling me about? So I know that these people are fools, they are asses, and therefore I will listen to that, but I will not attempt to regurgitate it to give any kind of currency or any kind of oxygen to that level of stupidity. You cannot tell me that what is happening today is as a result of some other administration in the past. And that come like Rowley. As soon as he came into office, deliberately sent back a Grand Bay with respect, of course, to the Sea Bridge and the maintenance of the Express and the Spirit. And then tell us afterward, long afterwards, He told us and admitted, that his major problem as far as Tobagonians are concerned and his betrayal is that he sent back a Granby. But at the same time, he will come and those kinds of nincompoops who, of course, will say, because there's any port for an opportunistic storm to, of course, to do what? To defend the indefensible. I say it is indefensible, so it cannot be defended. That is an oxymoron. But the fact of the matter is that for somebody to come and regurgitate that on a program like this, I find that, it is unbecoming, and that is something that I would stoutly resist. Because nobody in their right mind will take those kinds of what I consider to be ambulatory, cacophonous, double talk, impossibility seriously. President, let's go back to the line. President, good night. Welcome. Welcome to the...
Good night, Lennox. Good night, Lennox. Good night to everybody in your life.
Yes. Good night to you.
Lennox, the saying is, when it can't be them, you join them, right? The PN I'm talking about. But how the hell you could join them when them going and destroy your children and have your children hungry and starving in the future?
Obviously. I fed up with them stupid talk. Yeah.
How the hell you're going to join them if you can't be them? And they're not going to serve no purpose for your children in the future.
Exactly. And you have to be real. So you're quite
okay,
right.
Lance, good night.
Good night to you as well. Good night to you as well. Yeah. If you know it's nonsense, you chalk it up as nonsense. Not that they don't know, They're trying to defend the indefensible. And I'm saying in reality, what they're trying to defend is a CPEP work, is a URP work, is a board work, is a chairman work. That's what they're engaged in. President, good night, welcome.
Hey, good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you.
Lennox, when you make a deal with the devil, he just wants something in return, not so?
Yes.
You see, all these lives are taking place, it didn't happen, my guess. A man went up on a platform and boasted, right? And that is one of the attributes of devil worship. You have to go out and resoundingly boast about your dealings with the devil. And he boasted that he was the cause for a man to be where he is, referring to the former Prime Minister, Mr. Manning, right? Now, when you're dealing with the devil looking for lives, in the history of PLM, this is the worst ever when I commit a crime. And not only crime, you see the type of crime that is being committed. The devil is waxing worse right now. And looking, remember he say he comes to kill, to steal and destroy, and he looking for those you see empty vessels who he will try to infiltrate. And that is what's going on. People losing their lives, people losing their salvation, because you know why? They're ungodly. They prefer praise a man who talking about devil worship and who doing obia and all them kind of thing. They prefer worship this man. And that is exactly what they're doing, Because you cannot tell me this man is actually doing things to poor people, right? You tell me simple as a food card, brother, right? You give out food card and you have money in the card before you give it out. Something has to be wrong. So it comes like you hate poor people, because people who deal with the devil, they don't give them to nothing. They not give us. They are not supposed to give. If you do like history on Satanism and thing, and you study those things, you cannot give. That is one of the rules. You cannot give to poor people. That is not permitted. You understand? So when you look at what's going on in the country, is a result of the actions of the heads. You understand? So these things are not going to stop, and they're not doing nothing about it. You tell me, We had the children who got murdered recently in the house, right? And that's even a few.
Yes.
Day before, and then today again. And then so many murders pass by where people are being murdered in pairs and even more than that, right? And you tell me nobody in national security come out to make a statement. You tell me nobody in social development they come out to give to console these families or to say something on behalf of them. Who is counseling the families of these people? You hear nothing about that. So you cannot. You remember when Ms. Besassa was there, right? And it had crime and certain murders and took place. She went personally to the family, right? And she had a word with them. She has sent out. Look, even I see a Christmas message from the opposition leader. I hear nothing from the prime minister yet, and I've started to be corrected, right? But the point about it is chalk and cheese with the two people, the chalk and cheese with the two um, parties right now, the two head parties right now, the PNM and the UNC. When you look at the things that the UNC did and the thing that the PNM is doing right now, there's nothing to boast about in this government. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And if we continue, and I don't want to be too long, if we continue to give fuel to these people, we don't have a Trinidad and Tobago, you know. Because you see, that was taking place on the highway and all this. But tell me if my children was going up the highway, when that happened, they had to turn around, you know.
Yeah.
You know how frightening.
It could have been called. Anybody's shot could have been called on that occasion. But somebody did, you know. A woman died.
Yeah, and you hear the comments they're making on the radio? You hear the comments they're making? They say, oh, why she people? The lady in she damn house.
I never see that.
She in she house. So my point is, if we do not take steps to get these people out of here, because to me, if nothing caused me to push for this government to come out of power, is this what's going on right now in this country? Because you're not safe nowhere, brother. You're not safe nowhere. And it's better you fight for something to survive than you don't fight at all.
Or die for nothing. Yes, I agree with you.
Exactly.
Yes.
We have to do something in the near future, brother. With some coming days, we have to do something about this. This is absolutely ridiculous what's going on in this place. And nobody in government is saying nothing about it. They are comfortable with this. You tell me guns and then coming in and they may say nothing. There are things I wanted to see. But you know, it's something that has to stay quiet. But we know exactly what is going on in this country. And that is why they're not doing nothing about crime. Because they're living off of it. Right? So good night, my brother, and good programming.
Yes. But of course, I heard Kamala Prasad Bissessa once talk about anarcho government. And that will be aptly as well characterizing and descriptive of this government. Because Delcy Rodriguez was here. They have handsy-pantsy with, of course, the Venezuelans. And in spite, of course, of the apparent, what I consider to be inchoate, halfway reversal of the Americans. And only because in their own interests, as soon as the things are honky-dory and reverted to normalcy in terms of their energy supply and their obligation to, of course, providing Europe with their European friends, part of NATO and the arrangements that they would have, especially after the Second World War in 1945. And the close relationship, of course, between Britain and the United States. And, of course, Venezuela and now Guyana sitting on probably the largest reserve in the world. They will not want to pursue Maduro, even though, of course, the indictment of $15 million for his capture is still a bounty and still valid in the United States. But they know in all practicality he wouldn't go there, because if he does rest his foot there, the authorities will take a turn in his tail. So he could come to St. Vincent because he knows that the Americans would be, of course, throwing a blind eye to that. But I'm sure if the Americans had known about Delcy Rodriguez coming to Trinidad under COVID, and therefore undercover, facilitated by Rowley and his criminal gang, we call him on 104.7, Andy and me who call him, of course, he, Rowley, and Short Young and them drug pushers. We call them gangsters. We call them, of course, persons who are engaged in, of course, activities that is associated with what we know as drug mules and narcotic runners. And why we did it? Because Delcy Rodriguez has been banned from Europe on that basis. And her boss, Maduro, has a bounty on his head for $15 million for exporting to the United States narcotics. So what do we say about our own leaders who, of course, in such circumstances, when they kept our own citizens out of the country and they couldn't fly in? You locked down the borders and you locked down, of course, our airspace. But Delcy Rodriguez was allowed to fly in with a sanctioned plane, and we don't know what she brought on it for them. It has to be an errand that she was on. And next day, a shipment of gasoline sold from the information from Paria, our own importing entity, consequential of the damaging or the mashing up of Petrotrin. And the same shipment ended up in Venezuela under sanction. And Rowley is annoyed and calling people unpatriotic when Kamala and them say to the Americans, investigate this blasted matter because something is amiss. Something is awkward. Something is wrong. Something is dishonest about that whole activity. Yes, indeed. But of course, we have a caller from on the line, but not on the system. So you'll have to listen a little more attentively because he will have to talk through my microphone. President, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
What Inspector Smith said, about I see that what happened on the highway. He said that them fellas is coward and he's right. Gary Griffith said the same thing. Johnny Abraham said the same thing. It's only because they had that gun in their hand. But I hear that.
Yes, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay, Inspector Smith is the man that we know from serious, Like a serious man,
All right.
See disappointment on the man things what happen in the country. And you keep asking yourself, why he can't keep up with Gary Griffith and Johnny Abraham and done this whole thing? Why the government, like the thing we run out there and told enough? And the caller who they call will say, they didn't say nothing. Smith, Gary Griffith, Johnny Abraham could solve this whole problem. You think if people are there are going to run behind people so? I will drop on the car, put good cocktail on them. This is the point the man was trying to make when they say cowards. It's real cowards. They could meet anybody on the road or going to stop to them. Man will be there to frazzle.
Of course. Without that aid, without that aid,
Yeah, we'll be there bad. And by the way, you see what happened now? But you were telling guy come what they must do. Tell the British to get out of the guy come out. He gave you the orders now. I wonder who's the brave one that's going to tell the British to come out of the Caribbean.
well, I mean that's another development that is very strange because they were calling for the British when they were laying the case in The Hague. When of course the International Court of Justice was hearing the case, they were asking for the British. The British weren't there. Now the shift is something whimsical like Rowley. Rowley just saying several things about the same thing, and of course confusing themselves, not us.
But let me tell you something else. The British will build a basic and important everything. Don't forget they stayed in Afghanistan for 20 years. And they will set up everything down there. So all these night trips by Delta and all that. That's done, you know. Nobody ain't coming out today, you know, and crossing no waters and coming here, you know. But that's let me see who, as I say, let me see who you bring back or one tell you which is
But yeah, he could stay in the little comfort zone and talk that hogwash. But as but
why you come out and go and tell them go for me?
Yeah.
Let them come slap or climb up the road one time.
Yeah, you know, the British and them will take that as nonsense talk, as wishful thinking. That's all.
But they move from there.
No, of course not.
That is for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. I will talk to you tomorrow.
Yes, of course. Yes, I certainly will.
If I give me a call now, maybe after you program.
I'll do that, definitely. I'll do that, definitely. Yeah, okay then, Papa. Yes, thanks. Yes, indeed, people. So there are a number of issues and, of course, variants on the same issue that, of course, you very knowledgeable contributors have been making. But let me get back, of course, to that particular clip that, of course, I want to complete before, of course, 10 o'clock. So let's get to the presentation by Khan talking about why it is that the deal was not, of course, given to the OWTU and the company that they created, Patriotic, because it was a lot of fanfare in the parliament. But elections was on hand, the 2020 elections, and the boy, did they extract every single modicum of a political juice that they could get, poisonous as it is, poison ivy as it would have been, but of course to hoodwink the people. Probably that is why the UNC got, of course, the popular votes, and of course in spite of the fact that they only contested 39 of the 41 seats, they got, of course, 19, and of course making certain, in spite of Rowley's second act of undermining the electoral process by not having international independent observers first and foremost, and then we have on film several instances where even Al-Rari in San Fernando West had envelopes after the close of the poll going into, of course, the returning officer's office. And then, of course, we have, of course, the what I consider to be the inactive, the dormant EBC, headed by, of course, Ms. Nasser Scope, the chief elections officer, and had very little patience when, of course, during the counts of the 5 or 4 constituencies that were carried to be recounted, she was totally, the EBC was totally impatient, and of course apparently looking as though they're taking the cue. They were taking the cue from Impotent, who was at the time the chairman of the PNM, and was saying that is a waste of time and so on, even though the people have the right to say, I am dissatisfied and I would like to have a recount. But when them, as we saw in the local government, they want every single seat. So they've gone up, of course, in Arima and got that one seat to, of course, that one vote to, of course, give them one of the electoral district in Arima. And then, of course, the matter that is still to be adjudicated upon, or at least decided upon, with respect, of course, to that a particular seat in Indian Walk, where of course one ballot they say was spoilt, but it was in the favor of the UNC, and therefore the UNC ought to have won that seat, or at least a tie, so that they could go back to the polls. So we wait and see all of that. But let's go straight, of course, to the issue of the refinery.
people who were invited to bid in the final round, 3 submitted bid. Patriotic, a company called Clash, and a company called Beowulf. And those are the other 2 options that are possibly, I'm not sure if they are still on the table, but those are the 2 other bidders in the bid round.
In cost, and a lot of people have asked the question as to.
I want you to listen to this carefully, because the oil field trade union would be asking that, and we should be asking the same thing. If it is that you cleared the way, if it is that that was not a hairy-fairy decision, if it was not a decision that was not well thought out, or as Rowley would like to say, that it was well thought out and therefore they fragmented the various parts of Petrotrade, how come you overlooked the fact that the creditors, the same people who were supposed to get that 850 million bullet payment, which triggered the closing down of Petrotrade and the action they took? How come they didn't know that no way they could have sold that oil refinery, but of course offered it? And I will tell you this, the only reason for it is this. Not only could they not sell the oil refinery because of the fact that there were liens on it, but they gave us the impression that the government would have taken care of that. Well, if the government would have taken care of the liens, why it is that you mash up Petrotrade? Why you close it down? Because they ended up doing the very thing that all of us knew that they had the option to do, and that is to renegotiate those loans. That's what they did eventually. But Rowley got away scotch-free, and the government, of course, averted crumbling under the weight of the fake oil matter and the government's connection to it. And at the same time, Rowley put in, of course, his personal lawyer, Anthony Kwamina, to, of course, manage or chairman of the legacy company that had all of the documents relating to the fake oil. Make him chairman. You understand the conspiracy. You understand the mafia. You understand the criminal behavior, and you understand why. Don't matter what, they could jump high, they could jump low. That blue lights and, of course, silver bracelet awaits the entire cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. It is just a matter of to what degree somebody will get more jail. That's all. Let's go straight.
If the refinery was so unprofitable over the years, why should anybody believe that a new entity can make it profitable? And there's a simple answer to that. The refinery is saddled with huge debt, billions of dollars of debt. Any person taking it over now will not have to carry that debt.
Yeah, again?
The issue of first priority.
You heard what the man said?
On the asset.
Nobody was supposed to carry that debt because the
government refinery is saddled with huge debt, billions of dollars of debt. Any person taking it over now will not have to carry that debt.
Well, again, the question has to be asked. If you knew when you made the announcement that you're closing down Petrotrade because you have a bullet payment of over $800 million, and is as a consequence of debts accumulated by that company, and now you want to sell the oil refinery, and you are saying now that they don't have to study the debt because the government will take care of it. What was the sense closing down Petrotrade? People, what was the rationale for closing it down? You didn't hear what Imbert said? Listen again.
Will not have to carry that debt.
3. The issue of first priority lien on the asset.
The refinery is saddled with huge debt, billions of dollars of debt. Any person taking it over now will not have to carry that debt.
That's what they said. So if you know you could have absorbed it, why the hue and cry? Why the mamagain of the country? Because you ended up taking it anyway. And I want to tell you what is much more bizarre. Forget the behind the scenes shenanigans or the behind the scenes matrix. The fact of the matter is that Patriotic came up with an agreement that says we are going to pay you up front $700 million. And what happened? These vipers, these evil people, claiming that they're acting in Trinidad and Tobago's best interests and that he could do more with less. And when it is convenient, like a typical hypocritical, what I consider to be evangelist or a man of the cloth or an ecclesiastic individual who will tell you what to do and what not to do, but he or she will be doing the very thing that they are saying not to do or to do, and saying that you will be sinning, you will be committing sin, but when them do it, they commit sin. Well, that is Rowley and his, of course, Likoto Jumbi nature, and of course, his conduct. It's pure jail. How you could tell me that the oil refinery was burdened with debt, but they wouldn't have, but the new owners wouldn't have to carry the debt? Then who will be carrying it? Not the government? Well, if the government was prepared to carry it, how the hell you close down Petrotrade? For what? And then eventually, as our common sense will tell us, that they had to renegotiate, which was also an option, further emphasizing that there was no need to close down Petrotrade in the way that they did. And let's go further, because let's hear it from Patriotic itself, and of course other players such as Kamala Persad-Bissessa.
The one thing that we require is for the government to make good on its commitment to remove the lien. Now, let me just go back to something very interesting with that lien issue.
You know what's the lien, right? The same money that Imbert said that the new owners, OWTU, who formed a company, gave them a proposal for $700 million US up front. Because I'm emphasizing that because I want you to understand clearly that the debt and the bullet payment about which Rowley said triggered, preempted, or should I say predicated, the closure of Petrotrade in the way that they did was about that 800 million US. I know your common sense already triggered that if they're giving them 700 million up front, then the government only had to look for 100 million or so in order, of course, to amortize that particular debt. But they said that they will, and worse yet, Imbert said they will absorb that, meaning that one would have expected that the 700 million that Patriotic was prepared to give up front would now be used for that purpose. But guess what? And they said they're acting in our interest. Guess what? They tell Patriotic, no, don't give us the money up front. Go and start to work, and of course, later down the road, a couple of years from now, or they could start to pay the 700. When you have $700 million, the people say they're giving you it up front, and you take it and amortize at least, so you'll have a difference of 150 million US, because you had 800 million to pay, and therefore 700 million from 800 would leave, of course, 100. So you only had that to pay, and you tell them don't bother. So how it could have been that it was that bullet payment that was due or could have been the problem. And you would see later down the road where they went and renegotiated. In other words, the creditors of them, wherever they were in the world, the government simply say, well, listen, we will pay you a little later. We'll pay a little more on interest. You will get a little more. But of course, right now we can't pay all of that. So of course, we will reorganize the loan in such a way so that everybody happy. So you understand? So patriotic was depending on the removal of the lien as well because Rowley and Imbert said so. And suddenly they're pretending that they're similar to, of course, what they are doing now. Notice Rowley said that he never, in the beginning, of course, he never interfered with the shortlist for a commissioner of police. Notice as well that he stoutly denied that he had anything to do, he and his government, with, of course, the Vincent Nelson, what I consider to be fiasco, and the attempt, of course, to undermine and to subvert the course of criminal justice. Notice that. Notice he continued to say that he, in the parliament of the country, that he was never involved in the fake oil matter, and he went, of course, into the parliament, and of course reinforced that by the same lawyer that he put inside of the legacy company, the Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Company, that is responsible for all of the fake oil matters and all of the documentation and all of the information and data related, of course, to that fake oil, and had to interface with the police because our investigation was launched. Notice you ain't nothing about that investigation. Notice that, Earl Christopher, what has happened to the investigation as far as the fake oil is concerned? What has happened, of course, to the investigation as far as Camille Robinson wages and that money that was, of course, alleged to have been laundering money is concerned? Where is the investigation with respect, of course, to Darrell Smith? Where is the investigation with respect, of course, to the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower? Where is the investigation as far as the Guardian Passage is concerned? Where is the investigation with respect, of course, to that highway to nowhere? Talking about that in the highway to Manzanilla. Where is the investigation with respect, of course, to Rowley saying that somehow he got back monies that was never ours, with respect, of course, to the highway to Point Fortin and the OAS, and of course recognizing, and of course the arbitrator in, of course, London tells us that it was Rowley and they who frustrated the blasted peoples and, of course, breached the contract. And so we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, now have to pay OS $1 billion plus, and we ain't talking yet about all the contractors that they would have owed in Trinidad. And of course that will have to come from the monies that are in the coffers that belongs to us because of Rowley and their incompetence, impotence, wickedness, and the attempt, of course, at criminal behavior, and believing that somehow that could give them political fodder, and that they could stay in those offices in perpetuity, believing that they could, of course, hoodwink us, deceive us, and stay in office. Those damn fools. That's what I feel. Let's go straight, of course, to Roger and hear what he had to say. He was depending on that.
You will recall, after the great revelation by the leader of the opposition about RBC and Traffic Guru and all of that,
I want to ask the government now, are they prepared to sell the refinery in Paria while the assets of those are currently mortgaged to the Bank of New York Mellon? They have mortgaged the assets of Paria, Guaracara, and Heritage for US $1.173 billion. I also have with me from the company's registry a copy of the statement of charge. So that New York Bank Mellon has a charge against the assets of these companies. Now, what does a charge mean? It's like you have mortgaged the assets to this bank for that 1.1 something billion dollars, $1.173 billion. You've mortgaged it. This is a charge as registered in the company's registry. Do you know if you have mortgaged your property, you cannot sell it? You cannot sell it without the consent of the mortgagee.
Members of the media, do you recall
So you understand what has happened there? Maybe for the first time that you are getting a detail, ball by ball, a taste of reality, which of course we have been touting and we have been of course beseeching and we have been projecting over the years and the various programs that we are here on a nightly basis telling you about. Is it that Rowley and they are now telling us that they didn't know that they couldn't sell the oil refinery? Well, I put it to you, and I put it, of course, to the world, that Rowley and they knew they couldn't sell the oil refinery, and that it had nothing to do with the so-called getting out of the oil refining business. And it had everything to do with protecting the government, the PNM, from collapse as a consequence of the fake oil matter that involved intrinsically Rowley. And they had to find ways and means of getting rid of the then Commissioner of Police because he was insistent on investigating. And wherever the pendulum swing or wherever the investigation led, and if it led to, if it would have led to, of course, the diplomatic center and Rowley, well, so be it. He will get blasted, lock up as a prime minister. And boy, oh boy, they went to work, and they went to work overtime on steroids to cover up. Because nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. You had to pay a bullet payment of $800 million. You closed down Petrotrin. It turns out that you couldn't sell the oil refinery, yet still you offered it up. Big fanfare, big, of course, publicity. The people, they even, of course, said that no way anybody else, including the UNC, could make a trade union a business or give them a business to run. They knew fully well that they could not have sold the oil refinery because of the debts accumulated over the years by a PNM administration, by PNM operative. I'm talking about Malcolm Jones. Malcolm Jones. And set up Roger and they. But damn good for Roger because he was pulling effigy of camera all over the place and can't smell the rat. And because it was closer to the 2020 elections, Rowley and them give him a leash and say, go, you damn fool, you nincompoop, you asinine specimen of inhumanity, and give him a leash. And after the elections of 2020, they then tell him in no uncertain terms, even though they're still saying that they're looking to sell, but make an excuse that, listen, you did not meet the criteria and it taken too long, and therefore the deal done. The deal done. And it was, of course, Khan and the others, of course, what I consider to be maniacs, PNM maniacs that, of course, had to break the news. But they didn't mind because they were in the clear and they achieved their objective, and they got back, slim as it was, but they got back into government by, of course, a reduced number by one. They went in with 23 seats and, of course, come back out with 22. Of course, the UNC went in with 18 and came out with 19. But the theft, the undermining of the electoral process built into that, and of course keeping the oil refinery from, of course, from being angry, from protesting, so as to spoil their electoral. The PNM are talking about electoral prospects. They got them by talk, by telling them, hold on, it's a complex asset, and they therefore wait until after the elections and so on. And of course, while of course the OWTU in a sense did not trust them and say we wanted, of course, the deal consummate before the elections, they were able, of course, to get their way by claiming that it was complex, and we had to look at this paper and that paper. And as soon as the elections result came out, they told Patriotic, well, hold your tail, we don't need you again. And of course, this fella Roger is all over the place, trying, of course, to salvage the stupor from the stupor that the PNM and Rowley had made them total asses. Yes. So we see clearly you have 800 million. The people giving us 700. So it's easy. You only have 100 and something. But no, you tell them no in the first instance. And afterwards you tell them that nah, you ain't see no sign that they could do that, and therefore we take back the proposal and leave the oil refinery up to today in fallow, when of course we could be bidding in foreign exchange. You tell me that these fellas ain't gonna make a jail for betraying the public's trust and the public's interests and the abuse of office and mismanagement, and of course of the resources of the country, misbehavior in public office, all of that are coming to them. They feel they have a case against Anand Ramlogan. They feel so. They feel they could take back that money from Anand Ramlogan. I mean, I am no lawyer, and I know that is nonsense they're on. But of course, it is to try to get a lifeline for themselves. They wanted to, of course, survive themselves. They want, of course, to be drawn in and throw themselves a lifeline. Well, I want to tell them, it don't work so. It's somebody else had to do it. And the people that has to do it is, of course, the law enforcement and investigative mechanism in the country to make certain that you all are faced with blue lights and silver bracelets. That is where it will go. No way. And at the end of the day, what they could have done in the first place was renegotiate, but we only put that out there in order to hoodwink and deceive, and of course to get to their pernicious and criminalistic way. And we must understand that it was a plan to save the government from collapsing under the weight of that fake oil matter, that the investigation was going here, there, and everywhere, and they could not, of course, rely on Gary Griffith to protect them, as they can now with Erla Christopher and her immediate predecessors, who were, of course, acting commissioners.
Press conference on the 11th of November last year, a press conference hosted by the Prime Minister and the Minister Khan, Minister of Energy, and Minister Imbo, Minister of Finance. I want to zero in here on what the Minister said.
We're not selling anything with any mortgage or lien on it. We will deal with that. That is a government matter. That's a matter for the cabinet, for the corporation soul, if there is a lien.
And that when we recognize that even as the...
Yeah, we say, again, reiterating what we said earlier, that the government will take care of the debts. So Patriotic was supposed to get the oil refinery free of debts. But it was impossible for that to happen because they simply didn't have the money. But the opportunity presented itself, and they felt that it was incumbent, it was an imperative, it was serious enough so as to set up a very elaborate scheme, with, of course, Patriotic none the wiser, or believing that they will get something that is beneficial to their members, having spent millions of dollars to, of course, put the project proposal in place, put a business plan in place, and all of that. And they put them through, Rowley and them put them through that, and afterwards tell them, you lost your money that you put out, and of course, you lost your trade union as well in the process, because members of the trade union would have been, of course, employed with Petrotrain, but they closed down that, and then they leave, of course, the once powerful, once potent, once significant, once important, once, of course, a prestigious OWTU in total limbo and distress and decadence and reduction. They were totally undermined.
Minister, as recent as the 11th of November, would have made a public pronouncement saying that lien is not the issue and that he can remove it, is a government issue and so on. Notwithstanding that, we made because of that we made our proposal, then we realized that it is a problem. But I want to say to you, Trinidad and Tobago, lien is the most central issue on this, in this.
Hush your tail. You know now is the most central issue. But of course, when Kamala Prasad Bisa Sunday were warning you, you tell them hush them out. Now today, OWTU has been reduced to a frazzle. The potency and the gusto and the force and the significance has been waned and has been degraded and downgraded under a pernicious, wicked, diabolical, evil, criminalistic mafia organization called the PNM, headed by a Don, or should I say a King Kobo opportunist called Keith Christopher Rowley, a rapist and a pedophile as well.
Whole acquisition process. As we speak, the bondholders are not prepared to release that. The bondholders were not prepared to support the proposal made by the minister. Was the minister aware of the bondholders' position when he made that proposal back in 2019, September 25th? We don't know. Was he aware subsequently? We don't know.
Is that we don't know? I believe that the rank and file of the OWTU should string you up and give you a good licking for wasting the time and their money, and of course lead them down a gum tree to, of course, a total disaster, so that the 65,000 persons on the southwestern peninsula now facing, of course, suicide. They are facing family degradation. They are facing poverty. Their children, of course, cannot go to school. They have no opportunity for work, and of course many of them have, of course, not passed their terminus as far as being employable is concerned, but there's simply no employment. And then, of course, the other businesses and entities that depend on those persons getting a salary so that they could have their shop running, they could have their grocery running, they could have their stores running. And the entire, of course, southwestern peninsula is now a blasted desert. So if you feel Port of Spain was bad for Christmas, just imagine what has happened from Marabella go right back down to, of course, Point 14. That is what, because of people who are sufficiently gullible and, of course, have been hoodwinked by a man who said that he is African, and therefore, as Africans, let us, of course, coalesce, and let us, of course, seek our respective interests, and let us act in our best interests. And at the end of the day, he's a blasted, I'm talking about Rowley here, a blasted, what? Yes, a pseudo-racist, a man who would use his own race. It doesn't matter, because he is simply a rockhead, a dunderhead, a volcanologist, and a rock expert, and of course outsmart these fellas who have been there long before Rowley and have, of course, been in charge of an institution that ought to be in its splendor today. It's now, of course, a shambolic state, of disgrace. You know, I say that the OWTU is in a shambolic state of disgrace because of the poor leadership and the opportunistic nature that, of course, you make Rowley and them outsmart all you. And so we are feeling the repercussions because the fact that the oil refinery is not working and the fact that we have a situation where there's a shortage of foreign exchange as a consequence, when, of course, if it was working and if Petrotrin was not interfered with in the way that they did, we would have had, of course, been bathing, of course, in foreign exchange simply because the war between Ukraine and, of course, Russia will be a welcome opportunity in spite of the loss of life, but there's nothing we could have done about it. Just as how Heritage, according to Rowley, and they were benefiting by a largest of over $8 billion in the coffers without having to add a single barrel of oil. I have no sympathy for them, and we must have no sympathy for all of them because they have betrayed the people. The most perfidious group of individuals that ever disgraced Trinidad and Tobago is all of them. All of them. People, of course, we have come to the end. It's 7 minutes past. We started early. But, of course, I think you got the gist. And I think I completed, of course, that particular issue that I wanted to raise. And, of course, tomorrow, what we'll do is put everything in perspective as far as video is concerned. Not tomorrow, sorry. I mean, on Saturday. Tomorrow, of course, is my night off. And as I said, I made a promise that I will simply say my night off, full stop. But that being as it may, have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And as we say, we will see each other. We have a rendezvous, of course, on Saturday night when, of course, we will continue with these and other matters. I trust that what we would have addressed tonight, you have a better understanding as to the deliberate conjob and evil that is Rowley and they, as we continue, of course, to look at what transpired within the last 8 years and moving forward as to whether or not we should trust that bunch of vipers and opportunistic political parasites who, of course, is now a lame duck government. And, of course, their only option could now be to lie down, give up, because 2025 will come. Certainly next week, 2024 will be here. Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And see you on Saturday night as we continue, of course, these matters.
And heaven and nature sing, and heaven.
It will be remiss of me if I don't say, don't forget tomorrow morning, the ground report, Andy, Michael, and myself from 6 to 9. I cannot forget that. So we join each other then, but of course tomorrow night, no corridor transformation until Saturday night. Have a wonderful rest of the night once again. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye.